by showing up as who you are uniquely designed to be, you actually get more business. So the salespeople and people, obviously I want to scream this to everybody, but specifically my message and who I really connect with are people in business. And yes, I talk about it with real estate professionals, but my passion is taking it into all other areas of business, right? There's no reason financial advisors and attorneys and anybody in a sales driven business whose main client is a human on the other side. The more authentic you are, the more you show up as you and understand your true gifts and abilities, the more business you're going to get, period.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. Thank you so much for being here. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Barb Betts, and she is a sought-after keynote speaker, a seasoned real estate expert, passionate educator, and the CEO of RECollective, a thriving boutique brokerage in Southern California. Barb has delighted countless stages, including Inman Connect, Women Up, and the National Association of Realtors annual conference. So she's spoken at all of those events. And whether she's teaching on social media or real estate by relationship, Barb brings an honest, compassionate, and transparent approach to every single stage. One of the things that shines out here is authenticity, and we're going to be talking a lot about that. And as a real estate professional with over 20 years of experience, Barb has mastered the ever-changing real estate landscape, which is, of course, ever-changing now, and the balance of running a vibrant brokerage. Through her signature course, Real Estate by Relationship, Barb educates business builders on the exact systems, processes, and knowledge necessary to succeed in any market. Known to wow an audience, impactful and high energy, Barb can help any audience tap into their greatness and leave feeling empowered and with an action plan. So thanks, Barb, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Adam. This is such a treat.
Well, I'm glad this came up because we shared some time together recently in North Carolina on the stage, and I got the chance to see you speak and share your story, and I was wowed immediately, and it's just so empowering to see the vulnerability and the authenticity you've brought to the world. And to develop a successful business, but also share with the world your passion for that authenticity. I'd love to take a step back and just kind of get into who Barb is and maybe take a step into that. Can you tell me how you got to where you're at today?
Well, that's a loaded question. Okay, I'll give you the shortest version I can, because actually It starts at 17 years old.
Right.
So the story you haven't heard yet is that how my journey in really my adult life started was 17 years old and pregnant. And you talk about that moment in your life where you know everything's changed and you don't know what you're going to do with your life and what you're going to become. And if you just literally ruined your life forever, that was me. So my husband and I, yes, I'm still married to him 26 years later. We found ourselves 17 years old and pregnant, had my son at 18 years old. And I put college on the back burner because clearly our life had taken a turn that we didn't expect. My husband pursued his college baseball career, went to play college at a Division I school. I moved to Oklahoma and followed him with the baby. And then we moved to Las Vegas, and then we moved home, and he had a very short professional baseball career, blew out his knee twice, and was woken up one day and told to get a job. And so then that pursued my career in education or taking something further even more on the back burner, because now we have to just wake up and be adults, and we're 21 years old and don't know what we're going to do with our lives. And so I got a job and I got into accounting, and I was really good at it, and I hated every minute of it. And by then we had eventually had a second child, and I was like, I got to do something else with my life. Like I don't want to be a glorified bookkeeper the rest of my life. And please don't take that personally if you are a bookkeeper. But what my mindset was I don't have a degree. I didn't go to college. All of my friends that are going to college are going to come into the workforce and pass me by. It's a fact, right? I do believe now where we are at now in the world, college degrees are less valued in the workspace. And I'm happy for that because I'm proof that you can be very successful without one.
Mm-hmm.
But I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I knew I wanted to have ownership of something. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted a certificate or a license or something to, have authority in the world. And so I decided to go to real estate school and get my real estate license because we had just gone through a terrible real estate transaction of our own. And I did what most professional real estate agents do, which is they have an experience and they think if they can do that terrible of a job and make that kind of money, I can do much better. And I wanted something that allowed me to have balance as a mom and be involved with my children. And so I did. I got my real estate license, lots of stories there, never looked back. I have now a 20-year vet in the real estate industry. I'm a real estate broker. My husband and I own a boutique brokerage in the real estate space. But my passion for what I always wanted to do as a little girl never went away. I always wanted to be a teacher when I was little. They always say, go back to what you wanted to do when you were 5 years old. And that's actually what you are most designed to do. And that's the truth. And so I found myself teaching in the real estate space. I found offices asking me to present. And that blossomed into more of a speaking and training career where I now run a real estate brokerage and I also sell real estate and I also speak and train in Keynote in the real estate industry. And then through that and through some personal journeys, I kind of came out publicly about the fact that I have a severe hair loss problem at a very young age. I started losing my hair at 18, didn't know why, lots of reasons for that. We can get into that. And I decided at 40 years old, I don't want to be bald. And I don't think women without hair, at least me without hair, was attractive. And so I decided to explore human hair alternatives, ended up wearing wigs full time for the last 2 years. And from that has turned into this authenticity journey where I now feel like I'm pulled and drawn to help in the real estate industry and out of it, help people uncover the power of being authentically who they are and owning their stuff. And realizing that the more authentic you are, the more people want to work with you. And the more authentic you are and the more real you are about your faults and your hurts and your pains, the more attractive people are. And then you end up doing more business. And so that's where we've landed today. And that's really my journey. And there's obviously pivots and twists and turns in there, but that's who I am and why I'm sitting here doing what I love, which is, helping others learn and grow.
That's such a great summary of, and it is absolutely a summary because I know that there's so much more we can unpack there.
Of course.
And I love to go back to, that 17 and pregnant moment because I know that was definitely a life shifting move for you, or part for you.
Yes.
So before that, what was your life trajectory? Where did you want to go? And I know that changed it, but what did it look like before that?
Yeah, before that, I was going to be a teacher. I was going to graduate high school. I was going to go get a liberal arts degree. And I was going to be a teacher. I was going to be an elementary school teacher, period. End of story. That's what I was going to do. And excuse me, quite transparently, I probably would have ended up being a principal, right? Yeah. And I look back now and I'm so grateful that moment happened in my life because I don't think I would have been a great teacher and I would have been a great principal, but I don't think I would be enjoying life at the capacity I am and impacting the lives that I'm impacting if I had been stuck back in that, what that 17-year-old girl turned 18-year-old girl thought she was going to do. Yeah. I really don't. But you talk about that moment and the fear. There is no other fear that I've ever felt in my life than that moment.
Oh, sure.
Of what did I just accidentally, of course, do?
Yeah.
And how is this going to change my life, my husband's life, and more importantly, this little guy's life that we were going to birth into the world at 18 years old when we had no freaking idea what we were doing.
Yeah. So what was your attitude about that when you found out? Like, was it were you just all in? Were you like, okay, my life has changed. We've got to make this baby the central focus, or how did your life change at that point?
First, it was shame and embarrassment.
Sure.
To be quite transparent, it was shame and embarrassment of being clearly very young and clearly very pregnant and walking around the world, carrying around that, who's looking at me, who's talking about me, friends that, of course, had opinions about it. So there was that. But once we had him and once we decided to get married, and we did get married 3 months after he was born, because it wasn't That wasn't the reason we were getting married. But once we kind of took ownership of that, it was like we woke up overnight and became adults. So when people tell me I have an old soul, they're right. I have a much different mindset than most of my 40-year-old friends have. I would say as I get into my 40s, the gap is growing closer, but let's just call it in my 20s and my 30s. Oh my goodness. I was so far ahead of all my friends because I had experienced so much life. So it was this mindset of, we're going to figure this out. We're not going to be a statistic. And how do we do that? And I think that really our relationship and our marriage, clearly, if we're still married after, some people can't even get through marriage with no challenges. And we had severe challenges. And I think the biggest thing I tell people is we grew up together. We've always been each other's best friend. We had just figured out life together. Neither of us knew how to do anything. We didn't even know how to open up a bank account. Yeah. We just had to figure it out together. We didn't know how to raise this kid. And we just became a team, became a partnership, and decided I'm not going to fail at this. Period. I'm not going to fail. And what do we have to do to ensure that we provide for him, we create a life for him, and we create a life for ourselves? Yeah.
Well, I love, and we chatted about that a little bit at dinner when we were together the last couple of weeks or a few weeks ago. And when we were with the group, somebody had asked, and I don't remember how this came up, it mentioned, how did you stay married for 26 years? That's a long time, especially when you're young. You met, and you said something amazing. And I really, really connected with this part because I think you said something along the lines of, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you evolved together, you grew up together, and you grew together.
Yeah.
And that resonated with me because my wife and I have been through our fair share of challenges too with, with our kids and with, I had addiction and
journey,
there's a lot of journeys, but but we grew, but I found the same thing. We just grew together. So that was your experience. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. I really believe in relationships. You either grow together or you grow apart. A couple things. Number one, I mentioned it. We've always been each other's best friends. We've always had trust with each other. And I think the third aspect of why we work really well is the respect we have for each other. I just had this conversation with a bunch of friends out at dinner the other night. We don't like hanging around couples that don't respect each other. There's been plenty of times at a dinner he has said something that has made me very upset. I wait till I get in the car and then I turn and look at him and say, what the heck were you saying? Or why'd you do that? I don't embarrass him at the table in front of my friends, right? Like we respect each other. At work, we definitely have to respect each other, right? Because we have staff that looks up to us. So it's being each other's best friends. It's always respecting each other. It's growing with each other. And then I think probably, the best thing about my relationship with my husband is that we are polar opposites. I mean, we really are. When they say yin and yang, we couldn't be more yin and yang. Where he is strong, I am not as strong. And where I am strong, he is not as strong. And that's come across in our family. That's come across in relationships with extended family. And so we just work really well together as a partnership because marriage or not, it's still a partnership.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Any relationship has to be a partnership.
Yeah. So that's an important point. I mean, even though you're polar opposites, how would you say that works? Like how are you able to make that work when is it just that opposites attract, or do you believe that that's the case? Would it not work if you were the same?
If we were the same person, well, if we were the same me, we would kill each other. If we were the same him, I think we'd be okay. But if we were the same me, we would kill each other. We would absolutely kill each other. We'd go off on emotional roller coasters. We would be really, really loud. We would not stop talking. We would, if you saw us together, you would definitely see the difference in energy. But the good news is where we are similar is in goals and dreams and desires and doing things the right way and ethics and morals, right? So as much as we are different, we have the same values. And I think that's another key piece to this is you and your partner, whether in business and in life, in marriage, in relationship, have to have the same values. And we definitely have the same values. And I think that's super helpful in our relationship and why we're so strong. Yeah.
That's a great point and distinction there that you can be polar opposites, but as long as you have the same values, then you can make it work.
So I tell my friends, you have to be in the same book and you have to at least be on the same page. You don't have to be in the same paragraph or the same line, but you got to at least be in the same chapter. Yeah. And some people are not. Like my husband and I have different, although we have the same political views, he's extreme on one side that I am not. Like, right? So even there, we're different, but we still value the same thing. He just has more tolerance for certain things than I do.
Sure.
So I think that's another space where it's like, you just have to have an agreement to not agree on certain things, which is okay.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you both want the same result for your life.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, because I'm sitting here thinking about like, well, what if I were in a relationship where everything was agreeable? And I'm just thinking of how miserable it would be.
Well, it would be boring. First
it would be
of all,
boring.
Right?
Yeah.
And the conversations wouldn't go deep. And because we're different, because we don't always agree, we help each other come to different decisions, right? Like I help him work through things. He helps me work through things. And if we both saw the world the same way, I wouldn't give him that other perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even mentioned the fact that I'm technically his boss. So that's a whole nother layer of that I have to correct my husband a lot. And you can imagine doing that in a relationship if he didn't respect my knowledge level. And if I didn't help him get to a different opinion on something, we could have some real problems. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into kind of the business world. Cause you know, saying that, having that your life kind of turned upside down when you're early, and then, leaning into that, becoming adults early. When did real estate officially get into the picture? And
real estate for me officially got in the picture in 2003. And then he actually was a land surveyor. He had thankfully got an opportunity for a very good career with a union, aspect to it in land surveying. He was very good at it. He's very analytical. Numbers are his gift. They are not my gift. And he was really good at it. And then the housing crash happened, right? The great inconvenience, the great recession happened. And all he did was new construction because he was a surveyor. And he was always out on job sites when they were dirt to build homes. That obviously came to a screeching halt. And he had always said to me, hey, if I get my real estate license, I could help you when it's slow, because rainy seasons, construction goes through its own flows. And so he had already had his real estate license and he was helping me. Well, helping me was like going on a home inspection when I was busy doing two different things. It was opening a door. I never envisioned that he would be my business partner. And then he had an unfortunate actual accident, water skiing, and almost ripped his arm off. He didn't, but it was a very bad accident. And he called his job from the hospital, the emergency room in Las Vegas, and said, I'm going to need some time off. I'm going to have to go on disability. And they said, well, that might actually work well because we were going to lay you off when you got back. And he was the last surveyor they kept before it got to the people that had been there like 20 years. And so he got laid off, and he turned and looked at me in the emergency room. Let's argue he was on a lot of medication at the moment. He turned and looked at me and he said, guess I'm going into real estate full time. And I looked at him like, no, do you know what real estate's doing right now? Because that was June of 2008.
Yeah. What was going on at that point? No.
Well, we won't bore your audience with what was going on in real estate. Just Google it.
Right.
And so he did. He came into real estate full time immediately with me. And we've never looked back.
That's awesome.
And we've built a phenomenal team and partnership and now brokerage. And I will say that I would not be where I'm at in real estate if it wasn't for him, because when I talked about all those differences we have, they really show up in our business. Every place I was weak, he was strong. So we go on these appointments, and transparently, I wanted to make everyone happy on appointments. So Adam, if you and your wife tell me that you think your home's worth $800,000, and I know it's only worth $750,000, and I'm like, sure, let's try $800,000. My husband will sit there and go, no, it's worth $750,000.
Yeah.
And he just stops talking. Like, sorry. Like he goes in with like, you hired me because I'm an expert. I'm an expert at numbers. This is what I do for a living. Right. So all these areas where I kind of struggled, he strengthened me.
That's great.
Conversely, he's not great at details. He's not great at sometimes communicating complicated things. So I give him the words. And so we really have built this company that people admire because they're like, wow, you guys do it all and you do it well. And raising our children through both parents being independent contractors and owning their own business, that's a whole nother conversation of why I believe my children who were born from teenage parents are the rock stars and amazing humans that they are, is because of our real estate business, because we were able to be present. And
That's
that's a whole nother
fantastic.
conversation. But being present with your children, there is nothing more important in life than making your children a priority and being present. And that really shows now as they are 26 and 22 years old, the amazing kids that they grew into being young adults.
Yeah. Well, I think you're a perfect example of someone who can, have something that many people would see as a significant life destroying challenge. I mean, some people would look at that perspective, and right away that perspective is negative. But immediately I could see that by your story, you shifted it into something like, how are we going to overcome this? How are we going to make this work? Mm-hmm. And it's like, look at you today. And I want to scream this from the rooftops, because when people say like, oh my gosh, this is such an overwhelming challenge, I can't do it. It's like, yeah, but what if you could?
Right. 1,000%. What if you're not? What if, it was kind of, I don't think I knew how to articulate it then.
Yeah.
But now I am proud to say we were not a statistic.
Yeah.
We are not divorced. Our children are amazing kids. In fact, one of Chris's baseball coaches in his teenage years, he was very talented and played professional baseball and was on the, highest level of amateur baseball you can play in the United States for years. And one of his academy coaches said to him one day, Chris, do you realize you should be a screw up? Like statistically, you had teenage parents. You should be a train wreck. And you're one of the best kids I've ever coached. And that is probably my biggest accomplishment in life, right?
Right.
But it was like, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm not going to be the stereotype teenage mom. Like, I don't have to be. I don't care if you had a child at 18. I don't have to own that label that society puts on us. Now, would I ever tell a teenager to have a child? Like, oh, it's a good idea. It works for me. It'll work for you. Sure. Absolutely not. The world was stacked up against us. But what I would say to a teenage mom is, your life isn't over. You can do this. It's unfortunate you're here, but you'll get through this if you just have the right mindset and put some goals in front of you. Yeah. So we didn't have to be a statistic. And then we didn't really know obviously what the future looked like, but we wouldn't change it for anything now. Our friends die laughing at us because we're the, 40-year-old retired couple that can, go on vacation whenever we want and doesn't have to get a babysitter for anything. And, all the goodness and we get to enjoy life with our 20-year-old children. Like we drink with them, we hang out with them. We can do all these fun things with them that not all parents can do with their 22-year-old. So we're pretty happy with where we're at, but I would never change it, but I would never go back and repeat it on purpose.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's situations, I don't know if people can understand that until they go through a situation like that.
You went through it too, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're grateful for your recovery you had to do, but you would never go and tell someone.
Yeah. Don't go out and get a DUI. Right. Yeah. Exactly. You don't want to do that. Yeah. But if you're going to look back with shame throughout your whole life, you're never going to change and appreciate the gifts that come from it. And that's why I love your story here, is because it's exactly that representation of, you don't want to tell teenagers to get pregnant, but you turned it into something that was so beautiful.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
You didn't ruin your life forever like you feel like you did in the moment.
Right. Yeah. So that's so powerful. And I thank you for sharing that authentically. And and so with your real estate business and working with, I know that, working through 26 years of marriage, that's kind of a unicorn thing, especially, but partnering with a husband too, is a unicorn thing. So there's a power couple element there.
There is.
What works? Like, what are maybe like the top two or three things that help it that relationship to work?
At work, it's separating work and home. So the number one thing that we do is when we are in the office or when we are on appointments, we're not holding hands. We're not, acting like husband and wife. We're acting like business partners. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. We really separate the roles. Number two would be we know each other's strengths and weaknesses and we let each other go with them. So my team, I own a brokerage. I am the broker of record. My husband just when I say just, doesn't have a broker's license. So I am the boss. When people joke with us on appointments all the time, they're like, so who's really the boss? And he'll be like, she is. And people are like, no, really. He's like, no, really. Like she is.
Yeah.
Like she is required by the state of California to supervise me.
Yeah.
So our team knows our strengths and weaknesses. You come to Barb for contract questions and problems and challenges. You come to my husband for inspections and numbers and all the stuff. Like people very clearly know our roles in our company, and our staff does too. They know who to come to. And he specifically will be strong enough to tell our staff, this is what I think, but you need to clear that with Barb because she's the broker. And then the third thing would be our ability when our children were younger to separate business from home. And we kind of had this unwritten rule, and I would give this advice to any spouse that works with each other, or quite frankly, any spouse in general, because this can happen even if you don't work together. It's that concept of mom and dad are always talking about work at home. And it can be that you work together, or it can be just that you want to catch each other up on your day. And everything that's always talked about through dinner time is work and what you did for the day. And so what we did was we would come home and one of us would be cooking dinner and the kids would be doing homework, or they're at their various different activities. And we would be catching each other up on our day. Because quite frankly, you think we see each other all day long and we're going in two different directions all day.
Yeah.
And so we would be catching each other up on what happened during the day. And for whatever reason, when we would sit down to dinner, we would stop talking about work. And then what I found myself doing is, even after dinner, if something came up that I wanted to tell him about work, I text or I email him, or I put it on his calendar, even though I'm sitting across the living room on the couch watching TV. We had this artificial off time that was called dinner time. It didn't matter if dinner was at 5 or at 8. Once dinner happened, no more work talk. It was all about the kids or just relaxing together as a couple. And we didn't do that on purpose. It naturally happened, but I can look back and tell you it's probably the number one thing we ever did. Yeah. Because even to this day, we don't talk about business after dinner.
That's so good.
I email him, or I put something on his calendar, or I leave myself a note like, hey, talk to Harold tomorrow about whatever. And it really allowed, because being business partners, you can lose the relationship in it, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the best things that we did. And then the last thing is, when you work together and you live together, life can get very blended. And so I would say scheduling intentional time away for mom and dad time. We were lucky and very involved in real estate. So we had all these conferences and trips to go to. And what was great is our kids never looked at it as mom and dad are going on a vacation. They looked at it as mom and dad are going to work, because we were. But naturally, it's a vacation. Right. So those things I would say are what have really kept us grounded and honestly kept our kids happy, because, they didn't have to hear about real estate 24/7. They definitely heard about it a lot because that was their life, but they didn't, it didn't encroach on their time with us.
Yeah. No, this is so good. And I'm glad we're touching on this because, in addition to the other things that you're an expert in, you're an expert in relationships. That's for sure. Which is great. And what, do you have any advice as far as, are there ever times where you feel like you just need to get to be alone? Like away from the husband or either one of you need to be alone?
Well, funny enough, I'm known as, so in personality assessments, I have taken all different kinds, but my favorite one is one that actually is more adjective-like, not pigeonholing you into a box. And so like a D, a letter. And I'm known as perpetual, which means I can go and go and go and go and go and go and go. And I'm very gregarious, as you probably saw. I can handle people and conversations all day long. My husband is not. He needs quiet time and processing time. And I know that about him. So that's number one. We know to leave each other alone and garner to each other's strengths. He has to work in the office in a quiet environment where it's business and real estate. I can work in Starbucks. So we know that about each other. And then lastly, though, as far as I'm wired, it's part of the reason why if you're watching the video, you see me sitting at home in my home office right now. I am not in my real estate office. He is at our real estate office. I can work independently at home and need that time where I just have the background TV on. It's just me. My staff isn't coming in from 15 different directions at me with something. He has to be in that environment or can't get anything done. Yeah. So we work in our environments, and I schedule myself purposely time at home. And then I have to schedule myself in the office as well, because otherwise I can naturally lose a disconnect with my team. Yeah. So both of us have different work environments, and we just make sure it works for both of us. But during the pandemic, he went crazy at home.
Yeah.
In fact, during the pandemic, thankfully, we owned obviously our own space. And so he would go sit in the office, even though he was doing the same thing he would have been doing at the kitchen table here. He just couldn't work in the home environment, where to me, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So,
Yeah. That's great advice. And just knowing where you're, how you're wired, knowing how your spouse is wired.
yes.
We have that same dynamic with my wife and I, because I think we share the same kind of dynamic as you two have, which is she's kind of the go, can always be around people. I need that energy break where I just have to get out by myself. So that's huge. And you mentioned kind of shifting into the business part of it. You mentioned that you'd always had a sense of ownership, that you always wanted to own something. So where did that come from? Like, what part of you came that come from, and how did that lead you to owning your own business?
So I think where it came from is I'm a very free-spirited person. I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to be suffocated into a desk or a role, or feel like you're chained to that desk or chained to someone else's goals and vision.
Yeah.
That always bothered me. And so I didn't know I wanted to own my own business. Honestly, I didn't even know when I got my real estate license that I would be owning my own business. What I thought was I would have a free schedule. What I thought was I create my own schedule. So if I pick up my kids at 3:00 and don't want to work the rest of the day, I can do that. If I want to go to the Halloween parade at 10:00 in the morning at preschool, I can do that. If I want to work from home in the summer with my kids playing in the front yard, I can do that. Like, that was what I was looking for, was freedom. Now, you learn very quickly in the real estate business, you don't got no freedom at all.
Right.
But you do create your own schedule and you can create your own destiny. So I didn't look at it as ownership. I looked at it as freedom to control my own life, quickly learning I'm a business owner and all the things that come along with that. But it didn't really come into, when I say ownership, I more wanted to feel like I had a title, not just an employee. I wanted to have a title. I wanted to be an expert. I wanted to have ownership of something in my life and control. So wanting to have freedom and control is hard. I don't know any other space, you know this very well, that you can have freedom and control. It's called owning business.
Yeah.
There's no other place you can have freedom and control. You can't have freedom and control as an employee. It's impossible unless you own the company.
Right. Yeah.
So,
that's so true. And freedom often, that's often misinterpreted too. I mean, people would think about freedom laying on a beach somewhere, able to just keep collecting money. So that's not what you're saying, right?
I'm going to get there. Don't get me wrong, but you are absolutely correct. I'm talking in freedom to design my life the way I want to design it.
Yeah.
And freedom to, it started out as freedom to be the mom that I wanted to be, and nothing against working moms. I actually, coach and train a lot of working moms that are all real estate agents in the industry, and you still have responsibilities. But I just wanted that ability to be there for my children when they needed me and when I wanted to be there. And that's really what I think the gift I was given in becoming a full-time, real estate business owner.
Yeah. And you say, it was a gift, and that's beautifully put. But I also think you worked really, really hard to get that too.
Of course. Yes, of course. Of course. Nights and weekends. People ask me all the time, moms ask me all the time, how'd you get through nights and weekends? I'm like, well, you set boundaries. There were certain nights I would set appointments. I wouldn't set more than 3 nights of appointments. So 2 nights I was home. Weekends, I have a philosophy, and I believe this in any business or, frankly, job, you got to make your children a priority. If you're going to have children, they got to be a priority. And so I teach real estate agents, specifically moms and dads, that if your child has a 3:00 baseball game, you don't do an open house at 3:00 on Saturday. You do it from 10 to 12. If your child has an activity and a client calls for an appointment, if that activity is important to your child, you tell the client, I have another appointment. You have to put your kids before your business or you will lose. And in real estate, it's really, really easy to become a slave to the clients. And I always teach real estate agents, you don't call your doctor's office and pick the day and time you want to come in. They give you options. So start giving your clients options around your calendar. And I'm proud to say my daughter was a very competitive dancer. We never missed a dance recital. We never missed a dance competition. I don't even care if she had dance all weekend long. We never missed it. I would block myself out for the entire weekend, and my husband would work his schedule around her performances, because there would be a couple hour lag before awards. He didn't need to be there for awards, but he was always there for the performance. Right. With my son, he played thousands upon thousands upon thousands of baseball games. But you know what? I'd be standing there in my work clothes, maybe sometimes on the phone in between at bats behind the, stands, taking care of business or doing my business on my phone. But I was always there for all of the important tournaments and games and things like that. Did I ever miss a few here and there? Yes, he played thousands and he traveled the world. And I still had a daughter in high school who needed my attention. But the whole point of that is when you ask my kids, and I will tell you, if you ask a lot of real estate agents' kids, they will not say this. If you ask my kids if they ever regret that their mom and dad sold real estate, they will tell you no. And when you ask them why, they will say because they were always there and we always got to do what we wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a gift.
Yeah,
because
that is beautiful.
If I had worked a 9-to-5 job, or if my husband had still been a land surveyor that worked till 3 o'clock every day in South Orange County, he would have missed a lot of our city baseball games.
Yeah. Wow. That's
there's nothing else. And that's okay. A lot of parents are put in that position. Mm-hmm. But what I say is if you're given the gift of owning your own business, if you're given the gift of having freedom, then don't ruin it by putting your clients before what you worked so hard for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And so I see so many people do that.
They do.
I see so many people do it. I mean, yeah, especially those that own their businesses. Their businesses become their baby.
Parents come up to me when I'm done speaking about priorities and priority management. I'll have usually moms come up to me on the side of the stage and they'll start crying and they'll start telling me, when you said I shouldn't miss soccer games for open houses, mm-hmm. I started crying. And I'm like, well, stop it. Today forward, stop it. Right? But we get caught up in this serving mentality, which is great. That's what we're here to do as real estate professionals, is to serve, but you can't serve at the expense of your family, because the time will come now where I can do whatever the heck I want, whenever I want, right? But for a period of time, your children are only going to be young for so long. And if you want them to be great adults and you want to have a loving family and a connected family, my son bought a house across the street from me 2 years ago. Him and his fiance purposely bought our listing, happened to be divine intervention. He lives across the street from me.
I find that so cool. I love that.
You want that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud that my son and my future daughter-in-law want to live across the street from their parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not all kids want that. So I'm proud of that. And that all comes from having this super close knit family that we had, that only came because of what we chose to do in life and how we chose to live our life.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful point, because you're able to do things, but if you're going to generate that freedom, what are you doing it for? Make sure it's for your family. Make sure you know what you're doing for.
There's nothing wrong with having to work a corporate job where you can't be at a 3 o'clock baseball game. But if you have the freedom and flexibility to do so, do not let that time be carved up with your clients. Yeah.
Great point. And great reminder. And thank you for reminding me that, because that's important.
You're welcome.
We get trapped in that sometimes.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. And that kind of does transition us into, the what you're doing now, which is, you are doing that teaching. You're doing what you wanted to do since you were 5 years old. Mm-hmm. So you're teaching people, and prioritization is one of those things. And your authenticity journey, I want to get into that, but I also want to share, because, we haven't touched on all the challenges you faced, because when I first met you, there's, I would have never guessed that you were struggling with hair loss. Mm-hmm. And that's been a big part of what you were sharing in your speech, and it blew me away. Could you touch on that a little bit and how you overcome?
Yeah. I started losing my hair when I was 18. I had no idea. I only know now because I look back at photos. I'm like, oh, I see it. And I had hairdressers that lied to me or didn't want to tell me the truth of what they saw. They wanted to, of course, just make me feel good. So I kept cutting my hair shorter and shorter, trying to put more volume in it and all the things. The reality is I have kind of 3 strikes in the hair department. I have genetic hair loss. My dad was bald at 25. Don't let anybody tell you your hair follows your mother. That is not true. Number 2, I have a thyroid problem. And then I found out I had an autoimmune disease in my mid-30s. And so as the hair transplant surgeon that I went to told me very eloquently, you have 3 strikes in the hair department. The reality is this isn't going to go away. Mm-hmm. And it just kept getting progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. And in my late 20s, early 30s, I started wearing a powder in my hair to mask the hair loss to where you couldn't really tell. I mean, I knew. I would spray it in my hair every day. I would hairspray it down. It would fall into my face sometimes with little black specks all over my face that were really embarrassing when someone would be like, you have something black on your face. What is that? And I'd be like, oh my God. I'd try to get it off my face real quick. I hated going out in the rain because water would make it roll down my face like wet mascara.
Sure.
All the things. And my friends, close friends, knew I had a problem, but I would never talk about it with other people. I would go to the pool and never get in the water, like all these things. And it progressed and progressed and progressed. And finally, it got to a point where I'm like, this isn't going to stop. And the hair transplant surgeon, told me the reality. I had a medical procedure that did work really well, PRP, where they inject these tiny needles into your scalp with the platelets that they take from you. That worked. And then it all fell out. And my dermatologist finally looked at me and said, I can't keep charging you money for this. Like, it's not working. And so I went to the hair transplant surgeon. He gave me the reality check that I didn't want to hear. And the reality is I had secretly, quietly on my couch, without even telling my husband or my daughter, who are with me more here at home. My son was playing baseball, still professionally on the road. And I would secretly search sites, and I would secretly watch YouTube videos, and I would secretly follow people that have hair loss and think, maybe there's another solution. What can I do? And so I did. I made an appointment for a hair consultation at a human hair company. And I thought I was going in for, one solution, which was full length extensions, otherwise known as a topper. And then when I got there, Ashley, my consultant, gave me the reality check I didn't want to hear, which was, you don't have enough hair on your head to hold in those clips. We call it bio hair in the hair loss industry. And she said, I think you should try a wig. And I looked at her like, you've lost your mind. I said, I'm 40 years old. I'm too young to wear wigs. There's a stigma behind wigs. Wigs look fake. I gave her every single reason. And my daughter, who was 20 at the time, she looked at me and she was like, Mom, like, you just need help in a different area. Do you know how many women wear full length fake extensions? Like, you admire their hair and yet it's fake. And so you're worried because you need to put it on top of your head versus just from the middle down. She's like, I think you should try the wig. And I'm like, looking at her like, you have 3 heads right now, child. I don't know what language you're talking to me right now. And my daughter's pretty black and white. She is very much her father. My son is me. And I did. I tried on the wig and I was like, wow. And the rest is history. Lots has happened since then, but that's really what happened. And then through that process, how this authenticity journey came out is I decided, while the time period I ordered it, so from when I ordered it till when I received it was about 6 weeks. I went through a lot of self-reflection in that period of time. I did a lot of reading and talking to very, very close confidants in my life, saying, I think not ever asking, just telling people, I think I'm going to be real about this. Like, I think I'm going to not hide behind this. And of course, my friends told me, you don't have to. You don't have to. It can be your story. You don't have to tell anybody. I'm like, yeah, but number one, people are going to notice. And they're like, no, nobody will notice. I'm like, you guys, they're going to notice. And number two, maybe I can help someone else. Like, maybe this can be my gift to the world. And it's obviously turned into so much more than that. But that's really how I got there, why I decided to do it, and why I decided to be transparent about it. Because number one, I'm a pretty honest, transparent person. And secondly, I didn't want to hide behind it. I wanted to see if it could help others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's such a beautiful story. And I'd love to hear from that authenticity, from that vulnerability standpoint that you've had, having like kind of had the courage to come out and say this kind of stuff. How has that led to you feeling? How has that led to you feeling? What has that led for you?
Yeah. So, the number one thing I hear all the time now is Barb, you're so confident. Like, I hear that all the time. And I have friends that have known me since high school or known me since, frankly, I was very young, who tell me you're a completely different person. And what I always say is that I did not put a piece of hair on my head and all of a sudden wake up one day and become a different person. That person, and the person in you after addiction, and the person in all these people that go through vulnerable and hard things in life, just like that 17-year-old girl that got pregnant, that person was always inside of me.
Yeah.
For me, it was these walls I had up of, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I don't have enough hair. Why does my husband have a head full of hair and I don't? You talk about, comparison.
Yeah.
Why does my best friend, who's 8 years older than me, have 10 times more hair than I do? Why me? Why me? Why me? Like, that confident person of like, I am enough. I am special. I am beautiful. I do have everything I need inside of me, was always inside of me. It's just, I broke down the walls around me and finally it was like, I drew a line in the sand. It was like, I put the hair on my head and I said, enough's enough. I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. And then it's like you unravel all the areas in life where you were being a people pleaser, all the areas in life where you were comparing yourself, all the areas in life where you weren't being honest and truthful with others about how you really felt. And now that I've unleashed all of that, I am a more confident person. I am stronger. People do see me differently. And then what you realize inside is people were craving that person in you the whole time.
Wow. So it was the authenticity really was a reflection of the act of putting the wig on. Mm-hmm. I mean, of letting go, of all of the treatments, all of the stuff and all of that, letting go. Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Well, it was all fear. And that's what you specialize in, right? It was all fear. Right. I was scared of what people were going to say. I was scared of judgment. I was scared of, are people going to laugh? Are people going to talk about me? And you realize, and I do think it helps becoming older, right? Mm-hmm. Like in your 40s, I think a lot of us start to get this realization. You understand that nobody was really worrying about you anyways. Like you were so worried about what people were worried about, and they're worrying about themselves.
Yes.
We just all think they're worrying about us. And you kind of get this humbleness of like, who cares? If you're not in my world, you're not my world. If you're not my people, you're not my people. I got plenty of people that are my people. And through the authenticity journey, I think what I uncovered is who the real people are. And then you figure out who your real cheerleaders are and the people that are really proud of you. And that's pretty freeing when you get to that point.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, it was just this idea. I felt the same way when I got sober, and it was like this, through AA, which was a great program for me to get sober. I mean, that and for anybody getting, but the second A part always got to me, like the anonymous part, because that was always the thing that seemed to, in my opinion, and I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing this because it is a very, very powerful program and it helped me, but it seemed to reinforce that shame. I knew that eventually, like I had to be comfortable with who I was, and that this ism is part of who I am, and to embrace that. That's so great. When I grow up, I bought into the idea of my, of your mother's father being the influence of going bald, right? So my grandfather had a full head of hair till the day he died. And I was like, that's not going to be my problem. But if I ever started to go bald, I would just shave it off, so confidently said when it wasn't happening. But I realized like later on when it started actually happening and I'm going bald, that it's like, there's so much shame. I mean, even for, especially for, even for men, I can't imagine for, for women there, it must be,
It is. That is what I'm most proud of, is finding a community and tribe through this hair loss community that I'm now a part of, where there's a handful of us women who are like being the beacons of hope, that we women can talk openly about their hair loss and there are solutions and we don't have to hide behind it, because you are absolutely correct. There is a stigma with females going bald and there's not a stigma with males going bald. And let's face it, from what I've learned in all the hair research and science that I've done, is that all of our hair is pre-programmed to fall out. And you introduced me to a 90-year-old male or female who still has a full head of hair, and I'll give you a lot of money, because you're not going to be able to find very few.
Yeah.
And everyone's hair thins over time. It's a matter of the acceleration of it. And I was on the acceleration path that I didn't want to be on. My mom has a full head of hair in her 70s. So the whole mom gene, I always laugh with people. I'm like, you guys, like, do your genes pick your fingers and your toes too? No. Think about that for a second. It's like, come on, people. We all know the genes that are pre-programmed.
Yep.
They are not hair, skin, nails, feet, hands, size, body, everything. And, but I think that's what people want to hide behind. It's like, oh, but my mom has a full head of hair, so I'll be fine. Yeah, until you lose it and your mom still has it. So then tell me where that formula, or I've heard it skips a generation. I'm like, oh my God, you guys.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's all myths and stories that we want to tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better. It is all myths and stories. Yeah. Well, and so now you're kind of taking that, you are taking that authenticity story to the stage, which is really, really cool. And so what does that look like going forward? Are you speaking in more events? Or are you sharing in any other way?
Yeah. So what's happening is that, what I've learned is the message is that by showing up as who you are uniquely designed to be, you actually get more business. So the salespeople and people, obviously I want to scream this to everybody, but specifically my message and who I really connect with are people in business. And yes, I talk about it with real estate professionals, but my passion is taking it into all other areas of business, right? There's no reason financial advisors and attorneys and anybody in a sales driven business whose main client is a human on the other side. Mm-hmm. The more authentic you are, the more you show up as you and understand your true gifts and abilities, the more business you're going to get, period. My husband and I's real estate business has blown open because of my authenticity journey. Do I have any concrete, absolute proof? No. But can I tell you the amount of conversations that actually are said to my husband, even more than me, where our clients will say to him, we love the way Barb's showing up online. We love how authentic she's being. It just gives us this understanding that we can trust you guys. Like if you're going to show up like that and tell your story that way, you're certainly not going to show up to my appointment and lie to me.
Yeah.
And that really is what was the eye opener to me. And I watch some friends who I know are hiding behind things, and I see the way that they hold themselves back. I see the way that they don't show up as brightly as they can, and that's affecting their business. So it all comes back to being who we are, understanding who we are, understanding that we have faults, and you don't have to share every single thing in your life, for goodness sakes. And there are some things that, like when you were going through your addiction, it probably wasn't something you talked about. You talk about sometimes these things we come out on the other side from. And that's really my message. And yes, I want to get it out to as many people as I can, because I know what it does for people. And I know the process people have to go through. It doesn't happen overnight. And sometimes you have to dig deep. You have to hear it a couple of times. You have to realize that you are enough. And then when you do, and you have all this other business, and your business is so much better and stronger, and you're a happier person, it's a win-win all around.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And one of the most powerful phrases I've heard on that very subject, because you summed it up very well there, is, show your scars, not necessarily your wounds. Like your open wounds are, you need to heal.
Okay.
And so that's huge.
Yeah, hair loss wasn't, hair loss was something I went through quietly and silently. And there was a lot of wounds and nights crying and frustrations. Same thing with you with addiction. And it could be losing a loved one. It could be so many different things. And I love the saying when they always say, so for me with the pregnancy journey, I couldn't tell that story for a really long time without crying. Mm-hmm. And once I heard that you're only ready to tell the story when you can get through it without being emotional. Yeah. Like if you cried through telling your addiction stories, you probably used to get emotional saying it. Mm-hmm. And you're not ready to tell that story. But once you can say it, and you can say it in a way that is like, I'm recovered, I'm here, or I'm still working on myself, but I'm at peace with whatever happened, then you're ready to share it with others. Because for a very long time, I even hid behind the 17-year-old story. And I looked at the 17-year-old story as a failure. And now I look at it as a success. There was nothing, we didn't fail at all in that area.
Yeah.
We made a mistake and then we got through it. So huge growing points when you can tell your story without being emotional and really tell it to help others.
Yeah, that's a powerful point and a great place to end it, getting full circle here. And I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much, Barb. Where can people find you? Where can people reach out for speaking or anything else?
I'm everywhere. But Instagram is my favorite place to connect. My handle is just my name, Barb Betts. I have a website, barbbetts.com. You can find me pretty much anywhere. DM me, let me know you're interested. We can have a conversation. I would love to just inspire and educate as many sales audiences as I can.
Yeah. Well, Barb has some amazing content on her Instagram and I follow her. Please follow her, get that inspiration, get that authenticity. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, everybody. Thank you, Barb, for being here today. This has been amazing. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, Adam.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.